Welcome to Under the Rug at Work, where I shine light on problems that are normally swept under the rug. Today, I'm chatting with Dr. Liz Crawford Spencer about the hero's journey. Liz is a lawyer and has a PhD in planning, law, and business, and she's the author of numerous books and articles, and one of them, her latest one, we're going to chat about in the podcast. So thank you so much for joining me, Liz.
Nicole, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Can you share with people who might not have met you before just a little about your background and experience?
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up in the States and lived in Europe and came to Australia about 25 years ago. Professionally, I was an urban planner. I was really interested in design and environments. So I was an urban planner to start out, and then became interested in more about governance and went to law school, and then taught law and got involved then in looking at business relationships, contracting relationships, and how people treat each other at work in their business relationships. And I suppose that's where I am now, talking about workplace relationships, in the context that you're working too with the Psychosocial Safety Summit and your podcast and all the work you're doing around safety. And I think it's so important. And that's can't think of anything that I'd like to spend my time doing more than this. I just think it's huge.
Yeah, and you've recently written a book which has just been published and people can get now. And that's called Happy at Work, a practical guide to overcoming workplace psychological harassment. So clear alignment between our work, and I cannot wait to read it. The title is pretty self-explanatory, but can you share a little bit about what the book is about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted a catchy title, and it's a bit clunky, but it does say what it's about. It's about getting happier at work. And it's trying to be a practical guide to overcoming psychological harassment. Because I had experienced it, I would have loved to have had a guide like this. So it talks about what harassment is and what it looks like. It talks about all the secret rules and the processes and procedures and the surprises that you can encounter along the way, not just for targets, principally. It's about what targets encounter, but it's also for bystanders and leaders and managers and even perpetrators, for all of us, because we're all involved, to understand what's going on. And it's also about how to look after ourselves as individuals, and also how to work collectively to improve the workplace and get to more psychosocially safe workplaces.
Yeah. And gosh, I wish I had that when I was going through my experiences. I really had to figure out that sort of stuff myself. And I I find and found that the practicality and the tools and the options to know what to do are really missing. So that's one of the reasons why I started my business. And I think one of the reasons why we've connected so well. And I cannot wait to read your book.
Well, thank you. It isn't just my experience. I also, as an academic, did a lot of research, and I also used there were 350 submissions to the Australian Parliamentary Inquiry into Workplace Bullying. 260 of them were not confidential, and I read every one of them and included those experiences in informing the book, because every experience is different. So what one person went through and what works for one person may not be the same for someone else. So you really need a diversity. As you say, the tools need to be very flexible and need to be applied correctly at the right time in the right ways. And that's tough.
It is. And the tough part about psych safety is you can't really put your finger on it. As you said, it's different for everyone. Everyone's experience is quite different. And with a physical hazard, you can see the forklift, you can see the injury, you can see what happens, and you're able to resolve those much easier than psych hazards and risks. So to get into this practicality of it based on your research and your experience, that's incredible.
Well, and those, 260 others, and all the research, and the research is really bumping up in this area. So we're learning more and more, and faster and faster. But from a legal and regulatory perspective, again, as you would know well, we do need a shared understanding. Because as you say, what might seem like a joke to one person can be really devastating to someone else. So how do we say this is when it's bullying? This is when it's abuse. This is just, okay, it's just kidding around. And we need a collective understanding, which means we need collective attention to this.
Yeah,
It isn't just the target's problem to fix.
exactly. Exactly. There definitely needs to be that switch. What inspired you to delve into this, to read those 260 reports, to go ahead and write a book, which is not an easy feat, and this is not your first one either.
Yeah, it's not something you grow up thinking I'm going to write a book about workplace psychological abuse. One day I'll do that. It's one of those things that I just perceived such a need. As you say, when you were going through it, when I was going through it. Now, when I tell people that I've written that book, they say, "Oh, I need it. I need it." I was at the bank the other day, and I was just getting some paperwork done, and I mentioned that I just finished this book, and the bank person said, "Oh my God." She said, "We need that." And she grabbed a coworker and said, "Come on in, listen to this." And then they even grabbed the manager and said, "Come on in." We all had this chat. And I have friends in the States. Every time I mention the book, people say, "We need this." And um, domestic violence is really on our radar in Australia now, which is great. It so needs our attention. And I'm not conflating workplace psychological abuse with domestic violence. They're different, but they're not unrelated. And when we tolerate psychological abuse in one sphere, do we think it ends when we leave the home and go to work? Clearly, that's not true. And we do have the data to bear that out. There was a Lloyd's risk poll, that Lloyd's Insurance did a risk poll a couple of years ago, and Australia and New Zealand have the highest levels of reported workplace psychological abuse of 120 countries surveyed. So
That's not
why?
something I want to be number one on.
That's not a list you want to be number one on. And how can we be tolerating that? What are the factors that are making us a culture that accepts this and turns away from it, frankly? And so I wrote the book for targets to help them to equip them with the tools to deal with it and to emerge stronger rather than destroyed. I wrote the book for bystanders to encourage them to support people when other people when they see they need support and not turn away. And I wrote it for leaders and managers who say that they support safe workplaces and yet isn't running through what people who actually are in the workplaces are feeling. So many people are reporting that they suffer from toxic workplaces.
Mm. Yeah, it is a bit of an epidemic, and the legislation has changed to encourage and enforce compliance in this area, and ensure that workplaces are looking at it positively and proactively and preventatively, which is great. And hopefully we'll see the flow-on effect of that. But being able to have the tools to know what to do and how to do it is sometimes that missing link, which we're able to provide. And your book is almost like an instruction guide on that.
Tell me this, Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like we have much more legislation and protection around sexual harassment than psychological abuse.
And yes and no. There's a dual focus when it comes to sexual harassment. So the Australian Human Rights Commission has a positive duty, and it's one of the 14 psychosocial hazards that's identified in the work health and safety legislation. So there are 14, and bullying and harassment are one of them. people do get them confused, but there is a requirement for organizations to proactively prevent, manage, and eliminate all of the psychosocial hazards that have been identified, not only in the code of practice, but in the individual's workplace as well. So psychosocial risk assessments are really important. We're really there when it comes to physical risk assessments and understanding the harms and the hazards. But the mental health claims, workers' comp claims are increasing, and people are taking longer to get back to work if they do at all. It's costing organizations and it's costing workers. So that's one of many reasons why the regulators have now, the safety regulators have now introduced the new legislation to focus on psychosocial hazards.
So is that what we call the positive duty requirement?
Positive duty is for sexual harassment. Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of people get confused. I actually wrote an article on this not long ago, because I've been talking to organizations and they say, no, we're fine. We've looked at the positive duty for sexual harassment. And I asked them, what about the rest of the work health and safety psychosocial hazards? And they look at me blankly. And there has been a lot of communications about both, but because I live and breathe it as you do, it's easy for us to identify the legislation updates. But businesses are busy. People are struggling to keep up with the workload, to keep up with, family life outside, to keep the doors open and, pay the staff. So I can understand and I can see why people don't understand that the legislation has changed. And that's what I do as well, is try and make that easier to help not only the organization, but the workers as well, because everyone benefits when there's a psychologically safe workplace, as you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the title of the podcast was The Hero's Journey. And I know that the book follows the hero's journey. Can you share a little bit about what that means?
Well, we absolutely. Do you know Star Wars?
I
We have,
don't.
okay, you don't. I don't. Not everyone knows Star Wars. There's a director by the name of George Lucas, and Nicole, for those of you who don't know, he directed a film that's called Star Wars. And the plot of Star Wars was actually inspired by a comparative religion scholar by the name of Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he developed the idea that really there's fundamentally one basic story in the world, in all the ancient religions and mythologies and so on. And that he called it the monomyth. And the monomyth is, it can be broken down into, that's the hero's journey. It can be broken down into 12 parts or 9 parts. I'll give you 3. The first part of the hero's journey is the departure. And that's where we encounter a challenge. A challenge could be, I'm going to run a marathon. It could be one we choose. I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to move to a new city. Or it could be something that we don't choose, right? A cancer diagnosis, or sadly, well, things that are hard, like being bullied at work. So the departure is when we choose to engage with the challenge. So I am going to move to the new city. I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to deal with this cancer diagnosis. I'm going to deal with this bullying situation. Now, we don't have to accept. We don't have to go on the journey. We can turn away. We can quit the job. We don't have to move to the new city. So the departure is engaging with it. The second phase then is, once we've accepted the challenge, the second phase is the initiation. And in Star Wars, that went on and on and on. You have these challenges, you meet them, and you think that you've prevailed and you've come through it, and then boom, you get hit with another wave, and you're completely, knocked for 10. What are you going to do next? And it just keeps on going, and you think, oh, this is never ending, and I'm not going to get through it. That's the initiation. And then the third part is the return. And once you've grown and matured and been forged through that experience, you return to yourself and to society enriched from trauma to triumph. And you then can enrich others with your experience, as well as being stronger yourself. So that's the hero's journey. And would like to frame the book that way, and did frame the book that way, because targets are so often vilified, labeled as complainers, the ones who need to go, the ones who don't get it, they're the problem. And I wanted to make the target the hero. The target is the truth teller. The target should be valued. And so I frame the book as part one is, what's the challenge? What is bullying? What is our collective understanding around it? Who are the players, the perpetrator, the bystander, the target, the leaders in an organization? So, and what are the impacts, those sorts of things, knowing what it is. And then the second part of the book is really giving targets and bystanders and everyone really peeling back and laying bare, from my experience, the research, and from others' experiences, the secret rules, the perverse incentives, the ways that people get blindsided, the stories that get told that really aren't true. Like, well, there's a long list of them. Framing bullying as conflict when really it's abuse.
Or personality differences. Oh.
Personality differences. The dyadic dodge is saying it's just about two people, when really it's a whole infrastructure. DARVO, deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender, outrage management, the pitfalls of confidentiality, on and on and on. So that part of the book talks about all those pieces that if you haven't gone through it, you're not ready for it. You don't know. So it's trying to prepare people, or at least hold their hand as they go through it. And then the third part of the book is that victim to victor. How do you become victorious when you've gone through such a challenging time? And it really can be devastating. So that's for targets, but also it's for, again, bystanders, other stakeholders, leaders. How can we develop that, what Jennifer Freyd calls institutional courage, bystander courage, because this is a social problem. Psychosocial safety at work is a social problem. It is not an individual problem. That's one of those tools, or one of those perverse aspects of the process is targets are told, go and get help. Go, it's your problem. No, I'm sorry. This isn't the target's problem. This is a shared collective problem. So we need shared collective courage and understanding to get through it. So the triumph, the return, is not just a hero's journey for the target. Hopefully it will be, but also a hero's journey for all of us to get to a place where, as a society, we can spend our time thinking about things that we really need to focus on, global conflict, international migration, environmental degradation. There's a lot of work to be done. We can't afford to spend our time tearing each other down at work.
Yes, I love that. And I love the flip. We have to stop fighting each other and attacking each other. Look at the root cause of the problems. Look at ourselves. Take personal responsibility for our impact, our role in every interaction, because it is us. And to be able to look at the solutions and the future and how we can change that, everyone benefits from a psychologically safe workplace. So if we can look at how we behave and how we interact and how we can improve that, and the reasons why all this happens, which your book just kind of nails every point there, then the world will be a better place, because we will have time to focus on the important things.
Yes, but as you and I were talking about before the podcast, there are a lot of people running organizations and institutions who don't think they benefit. In fact, they feel that they actually benefit from the destabilization. Bullying perpetuates within organizations. So while at the same time that leaders of organizations are saying, oh, we're such a fabulous workplace, everybody's happy here, that toxic positivity, it actually benefits them to have these people sort of suffering over here, because managers, there are many reasons why, but it's the moral high ground. It's the the people who work for me are so difficult, and that's why I'm such a good leader and manager. I'm the only one who gets it. And a big one is a problem not recognized And a problem not responded to is not a problem.
Mm.
And we don't want problems.
Yeah.
So if we don't recognize it and we don't respond to it, and we just handle the bully and the target is get rid of the target, and actually the bully then is we've got them by the
Mm.
yeah, so we can control them better. It actually isn't always, leaders don't always see. There are many people in leadership roles who don't buy in to wanting to create a more positive culture. They actually, I think they must perceive in some, I don't know whether it's conscious way that
Mm.
they benefit from
Yeah.
bullying. But I think that there is a sense that they don't need to change anything,
Yeah.
that they won't benefit from that change.
Yes. And as you said, if you don't see the problem, there isn't a problem. And it would be great, and this is what we're working towards, right? Is that movement, that showcasing the benefits, showcasing what you're not seeing because you're allowing this kind of behavior to perpetuate. And I think the regulation change is a great start in making sure that people are preventative and doing the right thing to start with. And we'll hopefully see a shift and shuffle. But with the work that you do, that I do, that so many people on Under the Rug at Work do in their own daily life, I believe we can make that shift and show them what they're missing out on, but also help the organizations that are ready for it and looking for it, so that the right people want to go to the right place, and you can see that.
Yeah, I think you're right about regulation, but the law is always lags behind a bit. It's not generally the case that law leads.
Mm.
But I think maybe in this case it will. I think that the huge consciousness around domestic violence will help with workplace psychological abuse and awareness there.
Mm.
But I think it needs to be a social shift, and it needs to be really at the grassroots level. And there needs to be this real intolerance for sweeping stuff under the rug that so many bosses, and I've just been talking to someone in the past couple of days where the leader, she's left the organization, she's on leave, and the leader of that organization doesn't want to know. And it's the sweeping stuff under your rug, Nicole. And I just don't know how there's any more room under that rug, because it's just too much.
It is.
Need to stop doing that.
Yeah. And we can only do that by having these conversations, by writing their books, by having the summits, by doing the things and supporting organizations with what they need and individuals with what they need as well. So this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you.
If people want to find out more about you, how can they do that, and how can they buy the book?
Well, thank you, Nicole. The website is happyatwork.net.au. The book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. Happy at Work, a practical guide to workplace psychological harassment. And we're doing a book launch in the last week of July. So watch that space, and that will be on the website. And I will be at the Psychosocial Safety Summit, and I'll be giving away books and sharing information there. And I can't wait to see you there, because that is such an amazing initiative, and it's such important work that you do. So thank you for this podcast. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the Psychosocial Safety Summit in Brisbane in October. Nicole, you're amazing. I don't know how you do it all.
Thank you. I feel the same about you. And for people who are listening, I will pop the links to your website where you can buy the book, and also the Psychosocial Safety Summit, so that you can meet Liz in person, and the book launch when that link is ready to go live as well. Every time we meet, I love our chats. I love where they go, and it's all solution focused, and the great things that we're doing to really shift the dial.
Yeah, I think so too. And sometimes the solutions aren't obvious and easy, but starting with knowledge and awareness
Yes.
is a big first step to really recognizing and responding and remediating. So let's get this happening. Let's make it happen. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Liz. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.